Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar this afternoon with Kick and Factorial. I am going to just pass you over to my colleague Jack at Factorial, who's going to be presenting and demoing Factorial this afternoon. So over to you, Jack.
Yeah, great to be introduced. Thanks for that, Eilish. So, just for anyone who doesn't know me here, so I'm Jack. Started out on the direct sales here at Factorial on the SMB and the enterprise segment. Just for a few names there for people who aren't familiar, we've got Moe Hennessy, for example, Grant Thornton, people like Five Guys, for example, on the hospitality side there. So we are quite vast in terms of the clients that we serve. I now work on the partnership side after we got Microsoft's Startup of the Year for 2024, alongside a few other things that we're setting up here. So just going to hop through this presentation first. So why are we here with Kick? Firstly, we fit within those ERPs as a full HR solution. Excuse me. So for anyone who isn't familiar with the ERPs, basically, typically you'll have some level of HR function, but it might not be as comprehensive as necessary for most requirements. So basically, we fit in and we carry that out within the different systems. Who we are, I'll just cover this off really quickly before we get to the point of this, and I hop through and show you some of the platform. But Factorial's grown 3 times over every year since we were born in 2016. We're valued at over 1 billion euros, and we've had well over 200 million of investment. Um, Core focus in terms of our employee range is from around 10 to 1,500 employees, but we do also have that enterprise segment. Remember that we can service there as well. Big North Star that we're working towards over here is to become the global leaders on the HR software segment by the end of next year, and we're well on our way to doing so far, which is nice. So how do we help companies? Typically, this is what we do. So core, think of everything a HR platform couldn't do without. So it's your employee system of record. That's all of their personal information and their document and their contract storage. How are they signing everything within that? And then we split it into these 3 pillars. So operations, everything time and attendance. Think how you're planning people's shifts, maybe how you're getting them to time track them, how you're feeding all of that through towards payroll. People think, how am I upskilling my workforce? How am I making sure I'm attracting the right talent and then keeping them? And then finance is all of that finance side of thing, procurement, expenses, payroll, etc. We're modular here, so we can take and choose little bits and pieces of this. You don't have to come with the full spectrum. You can cherry pick these bits and pieces that are going to be most suited towards you. Awesome. So the premise of today's session is that I'm just going to cover through a few of these things that we've updated recently on the platform. So these are going to be the key areas that I'm going to be covering. It's going to be that time and attendance piece, the general finance, so the expenses and all the finance that links in throughout the payroll and general ledger management, etc. That's going to fit in towards your ERP, the project management, and then the mobile application. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the feature that we've updated on these slides, and then I'm going to hop across onto another screen and I'm going to demo it for you live here. So if you see me fiddling around a little bit with the slides, don't worry, I'll get there in the end. Perfect. So first things first, in terms of the time tracking, what we've just introduced is these new time categories. So basically what this refers to is, let's say if you have certain payments when someone's on an overtime shift, where maybe they get paid, I don't know, 20% extra for that shift. Maybe if someone's working on a Sunday, they get double pay. Maybe for a night shift, you've got 50% of additional compensation there. Basically, what this does is it'll automate all of this in the background so that all you have to do is click in and click out of your hours, and then all the rest of things is calculated through towards the payroll there. So I'm just going to hop back through and I'm going to share my demo account here for you so that everyone can see that. Hope that everyone can see my screen here anyways. But yeah, welcome back to Factorial for anyone who's seen this before, and for anyone who hasn't, I hope this provides a good introduction to the platform for you today. So this is what everyone sees when they first enter the desktop version of the platform. This first screen here is customizable, and we can have the relevant widgets for the different bits and pieces of the platform that you've moved forward with. So as you can see here, because we're talking about clock in and clock out, I've added like a little who's in to see who's missed their clock in, shoot reminders, view their timesheets, and I've also got the ability to clock in and clock out directly through the desktop here. Really simple if we're doing it via the desktop. It's just a simple click to clock in, click to clock out, or hop any breaks that we can then do the different automation in the background of if they're paid, unpaid, etc. So that's the front end from the employee facing side of things. As soon as they've done any of those methods, it's then going to collate within these timesheets here. So the timesheets are just going to pull the actual worked hours against the planned hours that we've got in the platform. So the planned hours are going to pull from, for example, your shift management. Maybe you've got different work schedules, people are working on part-time, full-time, etc. This is where all of that information is going to pull from. So what we've built, I'm just going to take you through towards the time tracking settings here. We create these different time tracking policies that carry out that automation in the background for all the different types of employees that you have in your company. So for example, maybe you're thinking I have some office staff that they can just do it via that desktop I've showed there, or they can modify in retrospect. But I have some people who are out on the shop floor that I need them to do it via a facial recognition, for example, or a geofence mobile application. This is where we sort out all those different policies. So just a bit of a walkthrough here. First thing is the method of the clock in. So be it the mobile application, which is geofenced around the locations, a tablet, which has got a facial recognition built in, for example, or maybe it's a QR code that morphs every 20 seconds. And then options like a physical device for biometrics, fingerprint scanners, things like that if you've got an enhanced security requirement. Second thing is going to be your preferences. So how we're flagging if someone's early or late, how we're building that in through towards the payroll exports, and when we're flagging it towards management and building it on the widgets like I showed you on that first screen there. Last thing, we've then got the breaks, which is going to do things like maybe if you've got certain rules and regulation that are industry specific about when you need to take breaks, if they're paid, unpaid, etc. This is where we automate all of that for you. But without further ado, the new feature that we've got for you is underneath this work time categorization here. So basically what we do is in the back end, we define those different categories. So I've just added a few different types here for my working on a holiday, for example, a few different kinds of night shifts. I've built in some country specific overtime laws, for example, if we're triggering it after 40 hours worked in a week, etc. All we have to do is build all this out in the back end. We then define what time frame they apply towards. So if it's regular hours, that means that this different payment can occur within the standard planned hours that they were meant to do. So let's say if they were meant to work 9 till 5, it's just going to work within those hours. Overtime is anything outside of those hours, and flexible can apply to both. So as you can see here, we just build out any of those calculations of what they'd account for, and then we associate those with those different timestamps. So really easy. You just add the category with the different calculation here. You apply it to the relevant days or time frames, and then you choose if it applies towards the full day, or maybe if it's a specific time slot within that day here as well. As you can see, I've just built in a few ones. Compliant with the UK regulation, I've just added my night shift in as 8 till 6, for example. I've added an increased overtime that's going to trigger between 7 and 8. And then I've added a few rates for working on a bank holiday, for example, and a Sunday rate here as well. So really easy. Once we've defined all those rules, it's still going to function exactly the same as what I've showed you on the front end. But what's going to happen is when you come to do your payroll or your approval of the timesheets, however often you're doing it, be it monthly or weekly, basically your employee is going to appear here, going to show the planned hours against the hours that they've actually worked. We've got this little thing here as well to highlight if they've worked the right amount of hours, turquoise line, less, yellow line, faint outline above if more hours. If I click through on Buzz here, all that I've done with Buzz is I've done a few of those clock-ins that are going to correspond with those different pay rates. So as you can see here, I've had Buzz working on a Sunday, bless him. I've then put him in for a night shift. I've got him working from 9 a.m. until 8 p.m. at night. So I've been working Buzz pretty hard, to be fair, over a 14-day period. All that's going to happen here is underneath when you click on this worked hours, it's going to map out the planned hours against the worked hours, and it's going to show anything that falls within those different payment categories. So here I've got 10 hours worth of night shifts, I've got 2 hours worth of that overtime pay, and then I've also got a Sunday rate as well, which I've done a full day on. If I click on compensation here, it's just going to flag the total amount that we have of that to feed through towards payroll. Given that we're in the middle of the month of November here, I can't click it, but it's just going to click through and say, do you want to compensate this through payroll? As soon as I've clicked that through, it's just going to automate all of this in the background in the payroll. So as you can see here through Factorial, we can automate the running of the pre-payroll process. Through this supplement section here underneath the relevant employee, there's just going to be a little tab here for example, working on a holiday or for extra hours, etc. We're just going to pull through that amount, add it towards the employee's payment for that month, and then it's going to be relevant on this export here that you can then do all of your payroll processing via. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to flick back through towards my presentation here so that I can take you through a few other things that we've updated. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask throughout. Next section is going to be the expenses. I've titled it here, but it probably more so fits within the realm of the projects. So this is where we started adding in the different costings towards the projects, being able to link up any of the procurement or the expenses directly in towards here, but also the ability to add the projected profits, costs, etc., manage that all directly through the platform. So I'm just going to hop through back in towards my demo account for you so that you can see what that looks like here, like so. So within this, it's going to follow very much the same premise of what I just showed you. So we can still do that physical clock in and clock out of any of the hours. But what we can do with the projects is it's just going to give you a little option here to add a project. So I've just got my save projects here that I've associated that employee to. And I can also add sub projects within that as well to further define and further segregate any of those hours. That's the first option. If maybe you are running a project's time allocation, but you have maybe a policy or a preference where you don't fit it around actual timestamps, like 9 to 5 or whatever it might be, we've just added this little My Projects section here as well, where we can just have the project on the left-hand side, day on the top, and then you just add the amount of hours that you've allocated towards it here. And then at the bottom, it's going to show what that looks like against the estimated hours, and it's going to flag if it's above that. Cool. So if we've done all of that on the front end for all of the employees, then it's all just going to collect for you on the admin side within this project section here. Just really quickly, how we actually create these projects. We just add the name, code, any of the dates. If it's billable, we can associate towards the client so we can track the billed hours. We define the roles within the project, and then the financial details in the background. Once that's done and we've associated the hours, I'm just going to click through on this example that I filled out a little bit for you. But it's going to track all the registered hours against that project, the evolution of those hours across different time frames here, for example, as well as the cost evolution. Pretty cheap this week, it seems. And then the distribution of that across different employees as well. Good thing about this is what it's then going to do is it's going to break down all of those costings per employee. So as you can see here, Councillor Jerry, I've got the amount of hours, the labour cost, as well as the spending that they've allocated across towards this project. And I can see a little breakdown on the monthly here of any of that association, like so. Exactly the same premise for the sub-projects here, where I can just hop in and I can see the per employee breakdown of any of those costs, worked hours. Spending is just the ability to have it where we're running all of those expenses and all the procurement processes so that they can tie up towards these projects. And then the tasks is just the ability to run your task management directly through the projects here as well, so that you've got a source of truth of what's happening. Within any of those tasks, you can add different documentation towards it. You can add due dates that are going to trigger reminders. And I can also add comments on here and work collaboratively with the rest of the team to make sure I'm keeping abreast of everything. Whilst I'm showing you a lot of configuration here from an admin point of view, everything from an employee view is always going to be a maximum of 2 clicks. So we try and keep it really simple. So clock in and clock out, literally a simple click to clock in, simple click to clock out. Any of those tasks that are associated with a project, for example, click to hop in, ticking it off as we go along, or I can tick in and I can look at any of that in depth, see all the attached documentation, write my comments, etc. So even though I'm hopping in towards the configuration on the back end, the front facing side of things for your employee should be very simple for them to navigate here. Awesome. So I'm going to go back towards sharing my presentation for you. Great. So drilling into expenses more specifically and some of the stuff that we've been working on here over the previous few quarters. So first things first, on the categories of whenever we're reporting an expense, we've made those customizable. It used to be that it was a little bit rigid, to be honest, where we just had the set categories and you couldn't create your own, which you could then report through and feed through towards your ERP, for example. So we've made that change on our end. We've also added our different spending policies here. So for example, if you've got like a per diem limit on any of the meals that you can do, maybe per expense, there's a limit on how much you can pay out for a private transportation, for example. All of that can be standardized in the back end as well on Factorial. A few other bits and bobs, so we can allocate budgets towards a certain team so that we can keep abreast of any of the changes that are happening with that budget, how much available, spent, how that's split across the team. And then we've also added the automatic mileage calculation via the routes here as well. So for example, if I'm starting in Manchester and then I've got to go through towards Knutsford for a client for some reason or other, it's going to automatically calculate any of those payments and that mileage on our end. Great, so I'm just going to hop back into my demo account and I'm going to show you exactly how that works. So if we start at square one of how we report an expense within Factorial, there's a few different ways that we can do this. Number one, we've got the Factorial cards. So this is where we can link these up towards a bank account and we can have it where it's a physical or a virtual card that can go in towards your Apple Pay or your Google Pay, whatever it might be. And then this is just able to be doing transactions continuously. So you just set up your different top up limits and your usage limits, all the different rules and regulations around it. And then we'd just be able to tap that card, for example, and use it continuously. Also got like a single use here as well for any one-time payments, just for a one-off. Second side of things is if you're uploading that expense in retrospect. So the two main ways that we're doing that is either via the upload of an expense receipt, for example, or a mileage expense here. I'm just going to do a regular expense for anyone who's not seen this before, just to get the mind going on how we can process any of this through Factorial. But basically, we just take a picture of the receipt or we upload a file of the receipt on the desktop. It's then going to use an OCR to recognize all the characters within that and immediately associate all the values from the receipt out on towards the different custom categories and information that you've mapped on Factorial. So for example, here you see it's pulled it into the category of meals. I've then got my policy here where I'm not allowed to spend that much on a meal, so I can see any of the overspend, etc., directly through this screen to help inform my decision on an approve or reject. All of the information here, I've got the document currency. We can also build it so that we have an automatic exchange rate in here, which just pulls off the European Central Bank rate for that date of the document. And then if anything doesn't pull automatically like a tax rate, it's just going to flag. If you're wondering how we actually get those expenses to link with the budgets or the projects, it's just able to be selected as an option here when we're submitting any of those. So let's say I'm happy with this expense. I'm not bothered about the policy, or I'm going to try my luck at least. I'm going to send that for approval. Again, everything follows that two-step where it should be a maximum of 2 clicks. Comes through towards the manager here, X, Y, and Z's expenses pending approval. 1 click to click through, see all the details, approve or reject on the basis of the information. If I then reject, I can send a reason as to why. Other side of that, is going to be my mileage expenses here. So mileage expenses, I choose who the submitter is. I can then map out the different journeys. So for example, I've got the displeasure of having to be based out of the European HQ here in Barcelona. So maybe let's say I'm starting off in Barcelona and then I'm doing a trip towards, I don't know, Madrid, let's say, for some reason or other to catch a plane to go to a client show. It's automatically going to map out the kilometers, the total mileage, and then I've just added a few more rates just to make it a bit granular, but it's going to calculate any of that towards you as well on your side. Again, as soon as you shoot that through approval, it's going to follow through that same approval flow, come through towards the manager within this inbox, and then they click through to approve or reject. One thing just to be conscious of on any of these approvals is we can build it up so that it's got multiple rules on how we're approving and multiple step flows. So let's say typically I have my line manager approve it first and then maybe finance go through towards a second approve or reject. We can build that in. Maybe if it's above a certain amount, it follows a different approval flow, etc. Those rules can all be built in and regulated throughout Factorial. Just to note there as well, important to note that everything that I'm showing you today can feed through automatically through towards your ERP, be it Infor, be it Business Central, etc. Awesome. Well, one final thing I'm just going to cover off while we're on this expenses section, because it's going to be useful for the last point that I'm going to cover on a platform update next, is going to be the procurement or the spending requests. Spending requests is typically for anything that's a bit bigger, really, compared towards an expense. So if you think of like a new software that you wanted to procure, maybe you need office equipment, maybe there's a new product that you need in for the office. It follows very much the same flow. You're just able to add all of the information through here, vendors, any attachments for the proof of concepts. As soon as that's done, you're going to be able to track all your spending requests here. They just flow through on that same approval flow through towards management. But as soon as they've approved it, they're going to be able to track everything en masse here. Same as anything, they can comment so that they can work on tandem. And then it'll get passed through towards a purchase order here. As soon as the purchase order is submitted, it can filter through in towards the finance where we hold all the invoices associated through towards the accounting ledgers, bank accounts, etc. Which links in very much so towards the next thing that I want to show you, which is the updates that we've added towards the first iteration of our accounting modules here on Factorial. So any of your accounts payable and maybe more so how your actual expenses, how your payroll, etc., can be reconciled directly through Factorial and could be managed from within the application. Thing I would note here again is that all of this is going to link through your ERP, which is the main benefit, of course, to keep everything centralized with the other departments that you want it to be. So I'm just going to hop through and I'm really quickly going to show you how this looks within the platform. If there's any specific areas on this part of any specific questions on this part of the platform, I may need to defer back towards the accounting specific team. So please bear with me if you put any questions in the channel here and I'm not able to answer them on the call today. Just hop through and share my screen again here. Cool. So I'm going to hop through towards a different account really quickly here, just so that I can show you the full breadth of what we do, and I've got a bit more information in it. Apologies if some of this hops up in Spanish. I've created this automatically from a demo generator. But great, the first step towards setting up any of this finance section on the platform is going to be importing your chart of accounts and all of your accounting through here. So really simple to do. We just add the accounts. We can either bulk import them. We just give you a download template that you're going to be able to mass upload onto the platform. It includes things like your ERP ID so that we can link that up directly with you, or we can just add those manually as well if you've got anything that's a bit more ad hoc that you're adding as we go along. Once we've associated those chart of accounts, we just hop within the settings here, and then we just set them for the different configurations. So for your different vendors, your different bank accounts, payroll, etc. There's a few options. So we can either just set it where we've got something that's default. So that, I don't know, if you use the same If you're using the same ledger, for example, for your vendors, for your expenses, etc., or we can get granular within the different categories that fall within this. Final thing just to note there is that we do also already have all the taxes imported here for you to be able to manage. But just if you've got anything else that's a bit specific that you see might be missing, you're able to add those different tax types here, add the different values, countries of your operations where it's applicable, and it's automatically going to be able to be pulled out through any of those character recognitions whenever we're processing any of these invoices or whenever we're running any of the accounting through this platform. Great. So let's say we've set up all that accounting, we've ran the payroll, we've got a few expenses and maybe a few procurement requests that we've processed. What's going to happen is through this finance section here, all of the invoices are going to be collated. So all of the invoices are either automatically going to move across from the other areas of the platform. You're able to manually upload them if it's coming from another source. And we've also got this mailbox management that we can have where, for example, if you're running any of your purchase orders through the platform, you're able to pull them directly through this no reply mailbox as well, just to keep things a bit more neat and tidy there. If I hop back through towards my invoices. So as you can see here, they're all going to collate for you in the list format. It's very much similar towards the expenses and the purchase requests. We can just validate those invoices as they come through. Once we've validated any of those invoices, we approve them to go through towards payment. We just click on this send to pay here. Let's say I click on a few of these that are validated for argument's sake. Oh, maybe it doesn't like me today. We'll hop back through towards that, but basically we shoot off these validated ones, we shoot across send to pay, and then it collates for you within this payment section here. So the payment section is where we can track any of those payments progress. We can download all of the payment files. I've got mine set on SEPA, which is European relevant here, but we can chop and change this. And we get the full tracker of any of those payments and then link them through towards the bank accounts once they're processed. Bank accounts, really easy. We just add the bank accounts directly through here, associate it towards a legal entity, select a bank we're linking it out towards. It's then going to create here after being validated from your bank side as well. Say I've got my cards account here where I've got the different card payments that I've linked up. I can also view all the expense cards directly through here, see all the transactions per employee, look at any of the controls that I've submitted against them and the budgets that we've set up in the background for that employee. And then I'm just going to go through on this general payments account so that I can show you what that looks like. All the transactions of any outgoings, ingoings, etc. As soon as we're starting to process any of these accounts, we just click on reconcile here. It's going to have all of your transactions and you can map them across with those invoices. We're just about to launch it where we can map it across through towards your general bank transactions too, just to make sure we've got the full process going through there. If I click through on something that's not reconciled, for example, this AI is already going to pull the suggestion that's going to go off the invoice that you have saved within the platform. Once I've confirmed those reconciliations, it's then going to hop through directly towards my accounting general ledgers. It's going to show through as paid and update all the status across the rest of the platform. And then if I click in here, this acts as your single source of truth for any of those ledgers that you're running through the platform. If you have done it where you've done it via AI and you just want to mold it towards how you see fit, for example, in retrospect, we just give you this little draft options, this little draft option as well, where you can chop and change the different variables here as well, so that you're not penalized, let's say, if you've mapped anything by AI. That was an awful lot of information to digest there about that finance section in a very short amount of time. So if anyone has any questions about any of that or any of those recent updates on Factorial, then please do let me know in the chat or get back to me when you see fit. One thing I would note is that if anything I've showed you today is maybe in a different reporting format or perhaps showed in a different way to how you would ideally like to pull it out, Let's say I take the example of my projects here, for example, and maybe it's all well and good having these different reports, but I want to map it out in a different way. The good thing about Factorial is that through this analytics section here, you're just able to pull all the data points across the platform and add them in towards these different dashboards that can field and house all that data. So if I take my project's time tracking data here, for example, I've just mapped out a few things where I've pinpointed my planned hours against my actual hours on the shifts. I've looked at the average balance of hours evolution. I've looked at the report per team. Maybe I want to look at some pie charts or some allocation charts to see where most of the time's getting spent in different formats. And all of this will be able to export off the platform as well as integrating it through towards your other platforms as well, such as maybe your Power BI or whatever you're using to collate all of this information with your other departments too. Great. So just let me hop back through towards sharing my presentation here. Very nearly got through without a hitch on that screen sharing there, didn't we? Awesome. So just to tee it off at the end here, I've just added an integration page which predominantly focuses on the Microsoft aspect of our offering here. Just to give you an idea of how well integrated we are across the ecosystem of tech that you have at your company. I've just used the example of Microsoft to show because this is a really good map to show how we link throughout the full process. For example, your recruitment linking in through your LinkedIn, all of your reports that you're pulling out of it, linking through your Power BI, everything that links in towards your other areas or groups within the businesses, filtering through towards your Business Central, communications running through your Outlook and your Teams, and then all your data stored on that Azure and the ability to pull off your user provisioning, your single sign-on, etc. If you think of this map relevant towards Microsoft, we can then lift that map and add it in towards different tech stacks. So like your G Suite, for example, maybe people here are on Infor, etc. If you've got any of those integrations or queries of how we fit into wider offerings that you might be undertaking with Kick ICT, please do let us know and I'll be sure to get you back to you there on how we fit in with that. Great. So no, not necessary to have this demo slide because I've just took you through it as we go along. I understand that I haven't covered that as if it's a first view. I've focused in on all those new features there. So if anyone's got any questions on different areas of the platform, such as maybe the performance modules and how we can do that, or the recruitment, the shift planning, etc., more than happy to hop on a call with you another time and we can have a little chat face to face on how we can wrap that around your company requirements and if it's a fit for what you're looking to do there. Cool. So if there's no questions, I've not seen any hop out at me as we've gone on throughout. I'm going to leave it there. Be sure to check in with any of your Kick account managers if anything that you've seen today looks relevant towards you. Again, more than happy to hop on a call with you and also pass across a bit of documentation and initial information if you just want a little look. Great. Look forward to hearing from you all soon and have a lovely day. Chat soon. Bye bye bye.